Hey guys, welcome back to the Detour Live. I'm your host, Dan Jones, and I unfortunately lost my voice. So I'm just going to battle through the best I can. I'm joined, as always, by four-time national road champions, John Trevorrow, Olympic gold medalist, Scott McGrory, rejoins the panel,
as well,
and
Dan.
the
You've
voice
lost
of
your memory
cycling.
as well.
Oh no, mate, I'm backs against the wall. It's stage 14. I thought I could get to Paris, but guys, I'm going to need some help on this show. I'll just be the referee. I'll just sit there and make sure that if he doesn't cut people off.
Who's the bloke down the bottom?
Phil Liggett, voice of cycling.
Thank you. Good.
Thought I recognised him.
Now, Dan, how did you lose your voice, mate?
So what happened is I'm on a bit of a lads weekend up here in Rye, beautiful Rye, and I brought the guitar. And stupidly, last night I got excited and played probably 4 or 5 1990s power ballads and gave it everything. But unfortunately, the voice just caved in. I'm no Celine Dion. I'm no Bryan Adams. And I've just caved. So I woke up this morning and thought, ooh, lemon tea, honey, hasn't worked. I've tried to recover. But boys, as I said, I'm just going to take a bit of a back seat on today.
I thought it was cheering for Mark Cavendish. Oh, goodness me.
So, if you could step up at the plate, particularly you, Iffy, but just don't cut people off. Don't cut people off.
Change my modus operandi. Okay. Well, let's start with Cav. We just brought it up. Well, he's equaled the record, mate. You know, I know he's not Phil. He's not quite there on count back, but he's equaled Eddy Merckx 34 wins. Pretty amazing sprint. What did you think of it, Phil?
Oh, heavens above. It was a pleasure to call. Of course, it was only because Mikhail Morkov, his lead-out man, slowed down in time to let Cav go past him. But Cav is take nothing from Cav, nothing at all. And Cav was a hero this morning in his comments. He says, do not compare me to Eddy Merckx. He isn't Eddy Merckx. He knows that. It doesn't matter. He's won 34 stages of the Tour de France at his speciality, which is sprinting. He's the best sprinter this race has ever known, and he's the best sprinter in the world. See, all the kudos is purely for him. It was fabulous yesterday, and it was such a hard way to stay in that peloton and to control that peloton, so he was able to sprint, and that's why he was so tired at the finish. He rode in the first dozen riders the whole day to make sure he was there for that sprint in a very technical approach in Carcassonne. I think it's the first time in the history we've been there. We've had a bunch sprint in Carcassonne. Normally, the rider who wins comes in alone. So he did it. That's all that matters. He did it. And I'm serious. He was in the interview I saw on British television. He said, I'm knackered. I'm totally exhausted. He could hardly speak. So what worries me is he's got these hard days coming now through the Pyrenees. He's got to finish them. Can his team get him through? So maybe he'll get that win number 35, either stage 19 or stage 21. Then he would be the top dog, wouldn't he?
Yes, and Scooter, that was a bit of an interesting finale. It wasn't the textbook De Koenig quick step. It started that way, but then others, DSM came roaring past it, all changed. So what were your thoughts on that final 400 metres?
Yeah, it was. So we've had several days or several stages now where obviously Mark's been the quickest, but the team has been just so strong to set him up. It was almost like the old Cipollini days when there was only one lead-out train and Chippo could step out at 150 metres to go. Mark's been stepping out at 150, even 100 metres to go. De Koenig had been doing such a good job, but he had to go and find his lead-out man Morku again last night. He got sort of taken off the wheel, a little bit more interesting, and I actually watched Mark Renshaw doing his little take on the sprint stage from yesterday, and he was correct in that when DSM came past, they've gone around the left-hander, got out in front, but then they went down the middle of the road, which just left both sides open for riders to come back again. And De Koenig, the gap was there. Had they gone to the left-hand side of the road, that would have completely boxed in the De Koenig guys, and Mark may not have come away with that stage win. Not trying to stop Cavendish from winning it, but that's one of the scenarios that could have happened. All kudos to them. They've got so much confidence. They're waiting. They know when to go, and Mark had to do a little bit extra than what he's had to do in the last few sprint stages, and was still fast enough to come away. And look, Michael Morku coming away with second on the stage, he would have won if it wasn't for him going for the record. Cav may have actually gifted him that stage win, but not in these situations. So, this circumstance.
And impressive. Philipson finished third. That's his 5th time on the podium. So it was the stage his teammate won in stage 3. He finished second. And every one of Cav's wins, Philipson's been on the podium. So it's very impressive.
Yeah, but I reckon Johnny, he would prefer to finish 5 times 150th to get one stage win. So
maybe. It's still impressive. He's been right there, very quick. He probably won't get to win one, but I wouldn't say definitely not, because he'll be in the mix in these next 2 sprint stages. Good stuff.
Yeah. Hey, fellas, I want to ask you about Eddy Merckx's comments where he said, I'm not going to lose sleep if Cav beats the record, but then went on to talk about how he won, not just sprints, mountaintops, all this sort of stuff, like Michael Jordan-esque, to basically say, don't forget I'm the greatest. Whereas if I was talking to Eddy, I'd say, mate, don't show your cards. We know you're the greatest. You don't need to say it. But being super competitive, and that's why he was the best ever cyclist, he's openly saying, don't forget me, guys. I'm still the greatest. What are your thoughts, Phil?
Well, we're going back over 50 years when I used to race against Eddy and I could never beat him. And I told him that fact 20 years later. I think I told the story the other week. And I went to Eddy's home. And I said to Eddy, this is Eddy, by the way, shaking hands when Cav was a world champion on the velodrome.
Better times.
They look pretty good friends there. Look, these two are not enemies in any way.
No.
When I told Eddy I didn't turn pro because I couldn't beat him, he just looked at me 20 years later, remember, and said, looked me up and down and said, you beat me. Well, that's the way Eddy thinks. He knew how good he was. I asked him, why don't you just lose 1 or 2 races, Eddy? Because my newspapers in the UK are getting tired of me having to do the same story every day. He says, because the people come to see me win, so I must win. And he could win. His greatest ever stage win of his 34 in the Tour de France was very early on in his first tour. When he had the yellow jersey on, he rode away and beat the peloton by many, many minutes in the yellow jersey.
Yeah, 9 minutes.
I think it was 9 minutes, John. I wasn't going to stick my neck out, but you did. Good lad. And I tell you, he believes in himself. But Cav, as Cav said, he said, please don't compare me to Eddy Merckx. And Cav has openly never, ever looked to this record. He doesn't want to talk about it. Clearly, he would like to do it, but he didn't want to talk about it. And when I watched Seb, the Radio Tour interviewer, speak to him 3 days ago, and Cav says, don't mention the name. Please don't mention the name. Because he didn't want him to say, you're going to get Eddy's record now. Don't mention the name. He wouldn't let him tell him. No, look, it's a press build-up as far as I'm concerned. I like both these riders for very special reasons. And now they've both got 34 wins. That's pretty good for me.
That's right.
The only similarity is that they have the equal number of stage wins. That's it. After that, completely.
We don't mention the 18 second places of Eddy Merckx and the 3 second places of Mark Cavendish. Yeah, we can mention that.
Yeah, different riders. Hey, I'm talking about. Sorry. Just how you were talking about Eddy, Phil, and when you said that you weren't going to beat him, that reminds me of a story that one of my 6-day partners for a long time was Matthew Gilmore. His father, Graham Gilmore, was also a successful 6-day rider back in the day and a very handy road rider, but he's very well known, or much more known, for his track and 6-day palmares. And he used to tell the story of being in the team with Eddy. Not sure what race it was. It was cobblestones, not Roubaix, but it was a cobblestone race. There was a breakaway, and Eddy and Graham went together to ride across to the break. And Graham, they were approaching this really difficult section of cobbles, and it's flat lands. Graham was really strong, really fast, very powerful, and he was thinking to himself as he was swapping turn for turn with Eddy on the flat, yeah, look, you know what? He doesn't seem that strong. I think I can handle myself. And as they got to that section of cobbles, Eddy turned to him and said, I must leave you now, my friend. And Graham thought, geez, come on, you bit of a wanker, as if you're going to do that. And he just rode away. He said there was nothing he could do. He just rode away from him on the cobbles. And Graham thought, yeah, fair enough. This guy's pretty good.
Well, if we're going to tell stories about Eddie, if you want, one more thing. At the Amstel Gold Race in the 60s, no, it would be in the 70s. There was a great 6-day rider, it happened, called Gerard Kool, but he was a good road rider too. And I went up to him at the start of the Amstel Gold, and I said, Gerard, who's going to win the race today? He looked at me, he said, Phil, he said, if Eddy Merckx has come here to win the race, we all race for second. Just like that. Race hadn't started. We all race for second. That's how good he was. Eddie used to point at go to the front of the peloton and point at the climbs on some of these classics and say, next lap, I attack here. He told the races he was going to attack there, and he would, and he went. He invited them to go with him. He was a very special guy. I mean, mustn't forget it.
Phil, do we have to put in perspective as well the era that Eddie raced in? They didn't have computers. They didn't have these race radios. It was all.
We've only got an hour.
So surely that's probably worth double the victories, given all the technology and the lead-out trains they got now.
Yeah, well, that's why Eddie has to tell the riders, because they had no race radios to tell them. So he has to tell them what he was going to do, you see. Oh, no,
he was a superstar. He was a superstar, and like you, Phil, I was lucky enough to race against him as well.
Did you beat him?
Like you, yeah, I did. I won Kermesse. I think I finished 23rd, and he finished 27th.
That's good enough for me, John.
Yeah, good enough. But there was a couple of years there, 75, 77, around that time, where he wasn't the best, where Freddie Martins had his measure. In nearly every race they raced, he was beating him comfortably in the time trials, and that was when Freddie won 8 stages in the Tour de France. I think he won the Vuelta in the end, but was almost won the Giro, crashed. But other than the really big mountains, which Freddie wasn't quite as good as Eddie, everywhere else he was actually better than Freddie for that short period of time. He developed a bit of a twitch not long after that, and he wasn't quite as good. But that's another story.
Yeah, but don't
Friday
forget that
central
Eddie.
nervous system.
But Eddie had that terrible crash behind his pacer, Wamps, who died in that collision, which really hit Eddie very, very hard. First of all, he lost a friend when the Derny rider was killed. Eddie himself really hurt his back, and that back has never repaired, by the way. He still suffers pain, and his riding was never as good again. No.
Yeah,
and if he
won a few Tours de France after that, he actually, he still won.
He limped through him. Yeah, that's why he pulled out. Yeah. He didn't measure up to Lewis O'Connor in 73 because he didn't start, and then O'Connor didn't come in 74, so Eddie won. Hey, we're talking about Mark Cavendish.
Yeah, I was going to say, Phil, in terms of Cav, people comparing, obviously, as I've said, with Eddie because of the record, but there's such different riders, different generations, all that kind of stuff. We know what Eddie was winning on all terrain. Mark is a pure sprinter. So I think, it goes without saying that Mark is the best sprinter of all time. Unless you guys, Phil and John, who were, like, you had Cipollini before Cavendish, but Cavendish has gone through, 13 years now. He's been through so many of the top-ranked sprinters, going back, to Robbie McEwen as well, and all these riders have come through. But I think he's the best we've ever seen. Basso was a good sprinter way back in the day. What are some of the other great sprinters that we might be able to compare Cavendish to?
Well, there are plenty, but the new crop of sprinters which were coming through, and at the same time, Cav seemed to be losing his sprinting ability. I thought, well, this is it, because these new boys are quick, and he's looking very, very average. And yet, Cav's got himself his brain back into gear. He is no longer living on his pure emotions. He's loving his sport now. He's loving being back with the team. He is sprinting as fast as he did in the old days. And all of a sudden, these up-and-coming sprinters who were really quick are now looking very ordinary, because Cav has found his best sprinting legs once more, and he's gone back straight to the top. So he's making the sprinters look as though they're all a little bit ordinary now.
You know what else has come back? He was very, very humble before stage one. knowing that, he got the start because Sam Bennett didn't ride, so he came in sort of by default. Now he's obviously more than justified himself within the race. But it does appear that he's got his mojo back as well, and there's a little bit of aggro, bit of attitude coming back, and the old Cav that used to piss a few people off, that seems to have returned as well.
Yeah, he does. I do wish he'd stop swearing every time he wins a stage, because I have to apologise to the American audience. But what can I do? Cav is Cav. And, of course, all the foreign riders on his team who swear, they don't really understand the power of the swear word, because it's not their language. They're just being what they are, Anyway, it's a dream come true. And in many ways, this Tour de France has been pretty exciting. Very newsworthy.
Hey, Scooter, do you reckon Cav will ride next year? Like, given the results this year?
Okay, that's a good question, because with a rider as competitive as him, and as a sprinter as well, right? So we're not talking about, you're talking about your Robbies and your Cipollini's, these guys that they like to keep winning. It's a real addiction, that they go out there and there's a real attitude. You have to have that as well. You have to have that approach that you are better than the others. It's your race to win. How dare anybody else try to beat me? That kind of approach, in the hustle and bustle of these sprints. He's so good at the moment that you would think that he would love to continue on. But, I guess he's going to get to a point where he is only going to slow down. And the faster guy, like Caleb, isn't there. Doesn't matter that he's not there, because you can only beat who's on the road. And Caleb crashed out. That's his own fault. He'll be back next year. So I think it's probably best for Cav, if he has, I don't know, the strength of character to retire on top. I think this would be a perfect scenario, and maybe if he doesn't win the next bunch sprint but then wins on the Champs-Élysées, takes the record, that would be the perfect time to hang it up right at the very, very top. But I don't know. I really think that he would probably want to go on with it. But, it's up to him. He can retire whenever he wants. He's the greatest sprinter of all time. If he wants to spend another 2 or 3 years and just decline and slowly fade away, hey, all to him. Good on him, whatever.
And I'll tell you what, he loves his family too, and he's not going to spend too much time with them just now. He's a Scouse speaker, really, because he comes from the Isle of Man, and his wife is from Essex, which is just down the road here. You know about all the tales of the blondes from Essex. Well, they're always talking about it here. I live in Hertfordshire, which is the neighbouring county, and I know what we think of the Essex people. Anyway, Cav keeps saying, you know what? I hate Essex. I hate it, he says. And my kids are all speaking like them people from Essex. I don't like it. It's a horrible accent. And I thought, it's a horrible accent, Mark. And you've got this one from the Isle of Man, that's pure Scouse. So, okay, well, whatever turns you on, go for it, man. Yeah. Well, so he might move away if he retires.
I don't reckon he'll retire. No way.
I think you're right.
He's a racer. He's back in the best form, equal to the best form of his career. There's no way he's not coming back. He's loving it.
Well,
but the next
year,
he will be. So if he goes forward, I think you're probably both right that he will continue, but he'll be up against Sam Bennett. He'll be up against Caleb Ewan. May have Viviani back to his best. He's had a couple of, this last year and a half hasn't been so good. Dylan Groenewegen might be back. You're going to have all these guys that aren't there now that he'll be up against. And if he runs fourth in every stage next year, then he'd probably be wishing that he retired this year. But hey, it's up to Cav. He's on incredible form. This has been an amazing comeback. Hands down, the last couple of years have been a tragic story for him, and he's come back from that, resurrected himself, and it's just been an amazing story.
Hey lads, another big talking point obviously was the crashes, and Iffy, we can't blame you for it, but Samantha says, who put the bad juju on Bike Exchange? Enough already, obviously, with Simon Yates and Lucas Hamilton unfortunately abandoning from the race. We'll hopefully have Matt White on soon, but geez, they must be gutted, Iffy, in the Bike Exchange team. And also with the women's team, we'll talk about that later on. They had a nasty crash with 3 riders going down as well.
Yes, it'll be interesting to talk with Whitey, who will be coming on pretty soon, to find out how they are. There's Lucas, evidently dislocated shoulder, but I think he's going to be all right for the Olympics. I don't think Simon was as bad, but Simon was always going to pull out in the next couple of days anyway, so he might have just thought, you know what, why continue, I guess.
He was holding his left hip, I think it was, as the cameras left him, and that's why he retired, that painful hip. Because we actually talked to Matt White after the crash live on American TV from his car. You know what Matt's like, very laid back, philosophical. Okay, we've had a problem, we've got to go forward and sort it out. But he did say that Lucas had broken something. At the time, he thought he'd done his collarbone. You're telling me it's his shoulder, John. I don't know, but let's hope. I was sorry Lucas went, as I was with Jack Haig, because those two guys, I wanted to see what they were going to do by Paris, and I think there would have been good results.
Scooter, does this just reiterate why it was a good decision for Van der Poel to pull out when he wanted to prepare for the Olympics? Because how many riders now that were going to be riding the Olympics have crashed?
Yeah, it's going to be. It makes it really challenging, doesn't it? The games with and with the women's, as you mentioned, Dan. We'll talk about that in a moment. But that also reflects badly on what might happen in the road race and the time trial at the Olympic Games. But for Mathieu, slightly different situation in that he made the decision to stop not because he's going to be doing the road race, but because he's going to be doing the mountain bike, and he just needs that extra bit of time to just hone his technique and his skills and the intensity that he needs for a mountain bike race, which is only an hour and a half long, much more like a cyclocross race. So he needs a little bit of extra time to recover from what he's done here at the Tour de France to then actually make sure that he's in absolutely flying form for a very high intensity event like the mountain bike. But yeah, you're right. With all the crashes that have continued to happen, I'm sure he's quite thankful. But, you know, with him and also Wout van Aert, you know, the most skillful riders in the peloton, you have kind of avoided all of those little mishaps as well. Maybe it's just luck because, look, Caleb is also very skillful, but he dropped himself and took himself out of the race. But, I'm sure Mathieu is very pleased that he didn't continue and find himself on the deck. Look, this also goes into the track as well, because we saw Roger Kluge go down and basically skin himself. His back looked horrific, and he's one of the favourites as a two-time world champion in the Madison. So he has 3 weeks to recover because the track at the Olympic Games is in the second week of the Games. So he has a little bit extra time to recover. But, so much of his energy now is going to be recovering from the crash and the injuries before he can even start to think about doing some track training and prepare for the Madison. And he's going to be up against Michael Morku again, who is just in incredible form, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes in the Madison at the Olympics. But there's going to be a bunch of half the peloton at the Olympic Games is going to be, and that includes Peter Sagan as well. You know, his injury, he pulled out because of his knee injury from the crash with Caleb. He has to try and recover in time to be in good form for the Olympics, although I think the course is probably too hard for him anyway.
Well, I think so too. He's not riding the Madison, is he, Scott Sagan?
No, he probably could though.
No.
He probably could.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Why is he going to the Olympics? There's nothing there for him.
So I spoke to Peter. I interviewed Peter a couple of years ago at the Tour Down Under. 3 times world champion. He's done so much at the Tour de France and all the other races, Roubaix, Flanders. And a question was put to him by the crowd: if he only could win one more race, what would it be? And he immediately said, could it be 2? He said, no, 1. You've got to select one more race in your career that you could win. What would it be? And he said, the Olympic Games road race. So I think he's just desperate.
This isn't his course.
It's not his course, but I think he's also probably a little bit probably embarrassed that he chose to do mountain bike in Rio instead of the road race and saw Greg Van Avermaet go on to win. And back then, Peter was definitely a better climber than Greg. Greg got over the hills, much to Peter's surprise, got the win. Yeah. And I think Peter's regretted that ever since. And now, even though the course doesn't quite suit him, he's desperate to try and win an Olympic gold medal.
Another comment. B. Foxcroft says, boys, coverage has been awesome. Will Bike Exchange now be all in on Chavez in the Pyrenees, or is there enough left for Bling to steal the green? And Dan, we all love a 90s power ballad, mate. Of course, Mr. Big. How can you go wrong? Hey, Iffy, what are they going to do now?
Well, I don't believe that Michael Matthews can take the green. Matter of fact, the only way he can take the green is if Bling gives it to him. If Cav gives it to him. So Cav's has got to get Mr. Time Cut, which is still a chance. But his big challenge now is that Philipson's coming up. It's only now a couple of points behind him, and I reckon he would be a big danger because he's actually sprinting a lot faster than Michael. But the other part of your question was Chavez. Yeah, bloody oath. I think Chavez will be a really big chance for a stage win in one of those 3 Pyrenean days coming up. today would be a good one if he get the break. And he's about, even though he's sort of like 14th or 15th or something, he's still about 25 minutes behind. So he could get into a break. And today is a tough old day. We go to Quillan, as you want to say, which I remember last time I was there a couple of years ago, Quillan, we stayed at Mike and Debbie's, English couple, got a beautiful house there. So shout out to Mike and Debbie. I know they watched the podcast. They looked after us absolutely brilliantly. So just really upset that I can't be in Quillan this year.
Hey, just on Chavez, right? Just quickly, why would Chavez finish 14th on the stage on Ventoux, right? When if you're going to sit up and conserve energy and you're going for stages in the last part of the tour, what is the point? I don't understand.
But he did sit up. He said he lost 20 minutes, but it's just that everyone else
makes more sense.
Yeah, but he did. But it's just that he's 25 minutes down, but he's still in like a 14th or 15th place. That's how it's quite crazy. Some of the time gaps. Yeah.
He's in 14th place. He's 30 seconds behind Wout van Aert. So the guy that ran second in a sprint stage a couple of days ago, which is
that's nice, Scott. Always the great leveler, Scott. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well so my question about Chavez, and we all love him. Okay, of course we love Esteban, and I would absolutely like him to win a stage. I'd like to see any of the Bike Exchange guys come up and do it justice for Jerry in particular, Jerry Ryan. But I just don't. I don't see it. I just don't see, even though he's in 14th place, he's 25 minutes behind. Now, the rider next behind him in 15th is Gaudu. We saw, him vomiting off the bike the other day. That's the situation he's in. He really, really blew. And he's just the rider that's behind Esteban in the overall classification. I hope that he's been saving it for the Pyrenees. But, typically, you see this in every sort of Grand Tour, typically, is when the breakaways start to form as we get into the second week. It's the usual suspects. You get the same riders often. Yeah. The majority of the breakaways, the same faces every time because they are just the ones that are strong enough and on the right form as we get deeper into these Grand Tours. And we haven't seen Esteban feature in any of these moves so far. He is either doing the most incredible poker face or I just don't think he's got the form to be up the front. And if he does make it into a break, I would suggest there's probably someone else that's going to climb better than him. And I hope I'm wrong.
Well, things change around. By the way, as we've been talking just now, Soren Craig Anderson is not starting the tour this morning or this evening in your case. He's the guy that won the last winner before Cavendish to Carcassonne, but he went down the ravine. We had the pictures of him climbing back up the grass bank, and he finished. Just announced him not starting this morning. So we're down to 150 riders now.
Problems with his team too, Phil. Hearing all these rumours coming out that he's fighting with DSM and wanting to get out of his contract, and they don't want to let him. All these sorts of situations. So maybe it was an easy decision. He's hurt himself. Right, I'm out of here.
Well, or maybe he's going to take up hill walking now after the way he came out of the crash yesterday. Yeah,
it was incredible.
Got a question for you, Phil, from the Wheel Wizard, who's the weatherman. Question for Phil and you guys. How much of the stages are shown in USA and Australia? Is it like Europe? We see the off, including the neutral zone. So do you guys in NBC cover it from the beginning?
Yes, we do. Today we're on a channel called NBCSN, and we cover it from. We have a studio 6 minutes or so talking about the whole day, envisioned by the presenters over in Australia, in America. And then they come to me in London and Bob Roll down in the studio by where they are. And we take the race from the minute the neutralised section starts till the very end. Today is a slight exception. We're on 2 hours later because we're on the national network NBC itself. And those viewers, of course, are not just cycling experts. They just love television, I guess. So a little bit later, bit of a more streamlined show. Of course, as American television does pump out the adverts, so we do a lot of adverts in the first 2 hours, and then we give them much more open space for the last 2 hours of the race. Try and get rid of the adverts so they can see the action. That's what we try to do. Yeah, it's good. They're long days. One day I commentated the other day for 5.25 hours. Yeah.
Hey, Phil, you said that the studio, you start with the studio before it comes to you guys in commentary.
Yeah.
Can you just take us through who are those places? Who are the people that...
Normally the studio is on my television here, but as you can see, it's black.
Yeah, but look how beautiful that big TV is, Phil.
Oh, you've got to love that screen now. It's unbelievable. I can actually see the riders whether they had a shave or not. It's amazing now. It really is. It really is. But so the facts and figures tip monitor is now this one. You see, all those things you can see are actually the facts and figures of the
cheat
standings,
sheet.
the results of the. Yeah, but the trouble is, it's so small I can't read it now. So I can't win. But anyway, it's
so
all great fun.
who's in the studio? So I know Christian Vandervelde is one
yeah,
of
we
them.
have Christian Vandervelde, who finished 4th in the Tour de France a few years back. Chris Horner, who won the Tour of Spain, the only American to win that race. And then we've got Paul Bearmeister, who's an all-round sports announcer, absolute professional guy, loves this sport of cycling. Been our front man for a few years now, so he anchors the studio. And just down the corridor, but out of vision, in another little room, he's not in yet. He's in. It's called Bob's Spy Cam. He's not in the office yet. He comes in there and he calls it like me from this little windowless box. But we can see each other on spy cams and we can talk to each other as well in the breaks. But that's it. That's the scene. That's the set. I forgot to mention, we do have two reporters on motos out at the race. And one we used for the first time last year, Adam Blythe, who used to race with Lotto Soudal. And he's been an absolute bonus. Now, we talk the same language. He comes from not far from where I was brought up in Cheshire. And he talks as if he's talking to his mum when he tells you stories. And he's been stopping the riders when they're racing back to the bus, which is not allowed, as you know, but no, so far so good. But he sees somebody say, like the other day, Philippe Gilbert, who races on the same Lotto Soudal team that was once Adam. And he goes, "Hey, Philippe, hang on." And this is how he talks. "Hang on, Gilbert, come over here. What's happening? What's happened to you?" And Philippe would say, "Oh, I just, oh, good." He said, "Can we go for a ride tomorrow on the rest day?" Yeah, fine, yeah. Okay, I've got to go. Okay, and he races back onto the pack. This is coming. We did all this live on television. Awesome. It is so natural. It's really great telly, and the viewers love Adam. He's, I say, "How are you going, Adam?" When I throw the link to him, there's about a 4-second delay because he's obviously on the race. Then you go, "I'm going all right, thanks, Phil." Oh, sorry. And his motorbike's just bumped a team car. And he just goes, "Oh, sorry, mate." And then he starts carrying on talking again. He's just hilarious at the times. Well worth a watch anyway. We're going to keep
he raced the year with Orica. He was good.
Yeah, isn't Brad Wiggins? He's on the back of the motorbike as well.
Yes, on one occasion only this week, Brad came up on his motorbike, alongside Adam, made some comment which I couldn't quite catch. But he was smoking a cigarette on the race, which is not allowed. He was just having his flag
on the bangers.
He goes, "Hey, all right, Adam, how you doing?" "Hello, Brad. Are you enjoying that cigarette?" I just carried on smoking. Different
He's
world
like
out there,
back at the Giro.
Yeah, exactly.
But
if he was riding the Giro, that's the difference.
Hey, before we let you go, Phil, and before my voice gives out, a couple more comments. Alan Davis says, "Hello, gentlemen. You're looking well. Thanks for the potty. Great input." Catriona McDonald says, "A stat for Scott. Cav has 13 stage wins, 13 participated, 13 years after his Tour de France win. So lucky, yes, and 13.
Well done, Catriona, because I actually said it yesterday on the coverage, and I was pleased to see that the English television didn't work their way around to that. So I gladly missed that one. You're right. Yeah, and you may also.
34 stage wins for 13 participants on stage 13 as well this time.
Yeah, you're quite right. But also, the date. What date did Tommy Simpson die on Mont Ventoux? When Cav took his hat off to salute him on the climb on Mont Ventoux. I'll tell you, it was Thursday. It was Thursday night, July the 13th, 1967.
Well, there you go.
13 seems to be unlucky for some, unlucky for others. Yeah.
Sally says it was great to see.
On the 13th.
I'm not sure that was lucky for you. I suppose it wasn't expected, was it?
No.
You well, that froze the screen, Scotty. That froze the screen.
Come on, Dan.
Sally says it was great to see Greipel having a go and Froome riding at the front. Do you think this is their swan song?
Greipel,
maybe not Froome.
And the guy that won that day, Niels Pollitt, was in the breakaway and won the stage that Greipel was in. It was Greipel who told him to go alone. He said, he went up to him in the breakaway and said, "You're the strongest guy in this move, Niels. Attack." he did, and he won. So that was amazing because Greipel had some hope of winning the sprint, I guess, but it didn't work out.
I think Greipel actually said, "Don't waste your attacks. Save it for later," because I think he was hurting Greipel too much. But evidently they're training partners. Now, I've had it been disputed because I didn't grow up anywhere near each other, as Cogs pointed out. But when Greipel moved to Cologne quite a few years back, they started training together before he was even pro, and Greipel sort of helped him out with old clothes and stuff like that. And now they were in the break together, so it's a lovely story. Yeah.
How's this comment, boys? Stuart McIntosh. My wife is watching the podcast for the first time. She reckons she'll be back again as she loves the husky voice of the young bloke in the top left-hand corner. Views might go through the roof tonight. The young bloke. I tell you what.
Oh, you're going to go to bed happy tonight, that's for sure, Dan.
I'm just going to keep every night busting out a few power ballads. Just keep the voice at that husky level.
What were the songs, mate? What were the and your voice?
I always open up with Mr. Big. Then I go Summer of 69. Then I go Save Tonight. Then I go Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer. And I finish with Oasis Wonderwall. And I've got the crowd pumping and I walk away. I go, that's it, boys. Enough's enough. Always 5. Mic drop. Always 5. Matt Pointer says, Scooter, send me some Oakleys. You got some new Oakleys, Tour de France style.
I do. And I've actually got, so the ones that Cav's been wearing as well, those big wrap.
And he didn't pay retail.
No, I didn't pay retail. I actually didn't pay anything at all. So, but I've got another set as well. So, yeah. Matt, I'll definitely send you 2, 3, maybe 4 pairs.
Wow.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Hey, hold him to that, Matt. Hold him to that.
Maybe.
Dale Simmons says Jonesy been on the lung lollies with Wiggo. I don't think so.
You should get the guitar, mate. Get the guitar out. Show us some tunes.
We're all joking and stirring up, but Dan is very talented with the guitar and the sing-alongs. Tour de France trips in the past, Dan would drag out the guitar, and I remember some nights with you and Giz.
They were great fun.
Yeah. Absolutely sensational nights. But anyway,
I was never invited.
Yeah. Well, you're always busy. You're actually doing work. Yeah.
Hey, so you sorry guys, Johnny, you just mentioned it. I'm sure the viewers, the listeners like to hear the backstory there. You say Giz, who's a British, he was British, English, was he English? I can't remember. So he owns a chateau in France that we used to stay at, or Johnny used to organise for his group to stay at several times whenever we're in that region, go back to his amazing chateau. It's almost like that what is it, the chateau show that's been on? My mum loves it so much. Yeah, so kind of like that. Now, he was a session guitarist for Status Quo. So definitely a very, very good guitarist. And Dan used to love it. She'd pick up the axe and the two of them would go at it. So
he was a Dutch-born Englishman, and he ended up having his own a studio in London, and he was very successful and sold it all up and moved to France, as a lot of them do, and with his lovely wife Marika. And I've lost his email because he moved to up just near on the border of Brittany somewhere, to a lovely home. We stayed with him. You were there, Dan, one time, and a great night. But I've lost his email address. So good guy.
We need to ask the viewers, need to ask the listeners to send in a bunch of questions, or at least some requests to ask Dan to, at least, if you can't sing tonight, of course, with his voice, but at least play the guitar. Just Scott. Show us. Yeah.
Kirsty says, Kirsty will donate to Kareka if I play a song. So, Phil,
Kirsty,
I have to do it for the Fair Nation.
You better get to the bank. We'll make this
Just
happen.
tell me what classic song you want. I'll play it. I won't be able to sing, but I'll close the show.
No, not tonight. Not tonight. Let's wait until you get your voice back and do it properly, because we can't waste a talent like that, Dan.
That's right.
I really enjoyed being part of this show, and I would love you to see us play us out maybe on the Champs-Élysées. Who knows? But why not?
Well, if you donate, if we get to 35 grand, I'll do it. But we have to get to that target.
Another couple of $100 last night. Thank you very much.
That's it.
You could do Desperado with that voice, though. That'd be perfect.
Oh yeah, or some sort of Joe Cocker. It needs that real husky. So that website, come on, guys, KARIEGA.co.
Well, Marika's almost got the name pronounced perfectly. Marika, now it's Kareka. careca.co.za/peloton.
That's it.
Yeah.
Make sure you
We're
donate
growing.
and
And
put in your requests.
I hear, John, that you've invited my wife to take my place on the rest day on Monday.
Well, you gave us the you gave us
Oh,
the
I know.
lemonade and sauce on the rest
Lemon
day.
sauce, yeah.
Honestly, they're releasing the film on Monday, so I've got so much.
That's right. And your wife jumped in and offered her fantastic services. So we can't have Mr. Liggett.
Well, if
we'll have
ever,
Mrs. Liggett.
Well,
a Liggett with a bit of personality is great.
She gate crashed my Voice of Cycling film. She's a bigger star than me on it, and now she's taking it over my job on the podcast. I'll have no work by the end of this.
That's right.
And I actually met Mrs. Liggett, Patricia, before I met Phil. So when I went over there in 1973, racing the full season as amateurs, organised by the great Ron Webb, walked into the Ron Webb's office in London, went just off out of the taxi, covered in, I was actually dripping wet because I arrived about a week later than the other boys, fag hanging out of my mouth, and there was Ron Webb's PA, Patricia, Patricia Liggett. So there
she wasn't going to let you in either because she didn't believe you were a cyclist, that's for sure.
No, she didn't. She did not. But we became very good mates.
You can't say that anymore, John.
Absolutely.
You can't say that anymore.
Can't say what?
Have a fag hanging out of your mouth.
You wouldn't want to, though, would you?
Politically incorrect these days. Hey, you mentioned Ron Webb. No, you mentioned Ron Webb. Give us some backstory. There are plenty of people listening that won't know who Ron Webb was. He's now the late Ron Webb. But he is instrumental in the world of cycling and track cycling in particular.
Well, Ron Webb was an Australian who went over racing in the 60s and probably in the late 50s into the 60s, racing mainly behind the big motors. But I've seen stacks of wonderful photos with all the superstars of that time. And he was right up there. You know, I think he ran places in world motocross, the big motors. They used to have these great big motorbikes and a huge sport in Germany. And he retired, stayed on. So he never ever came back to Australia. So he stayed on and became very successful with Skull Brewing and all of that. And he had his own indoor track that he used to go around the world. So he used to run the Skull 6-day and I think one in Denmark as well. What used to run the best Henning. But what he did for us, he just said to Australian cycling, look, if you want to send some young Australians over, I will organise their races for the year. So we just was virtually the Olympic team of 72 and a couple of others. We went over there and Ron Webb just organised everything. We just went from race to race. All our expenses got paid. It was just something that had never happened in Australian cycling. It was a chance of a lifetime. And we made a lifelong friend. And I was lucky enough to spend a couple of days with him. Only a couple of years ago, he came over and spent a couple of days over at the Tour de France, and we had dinner, and that was just wonderful. And sadly, he passed away just last year. But a legend of a man. And he built, as you know, he then took over from Sherman, the great track builder, building the bike tracks. He built most of the tracks in Australia and most of the tracks around the world, all the Olympic games, Olympic velodromes. He built most of those. So, yeah, absolutely amazing guy and funny, quick-witted, just an absolute character of a man.
Yeah. I raced on a few of those tracks.
Don't forget, even from Europe, he got every rider that took part in the first Tour Down Under contracted. When riders didn't want to go to the first Tour Down Under, Australia in January, when they're all doing their off-season training, not interested in riding a bike, now they're supposed to race. But that race is now always number one on the list. It is such a popular bike race. We spoke with Stu O'Grady yesterday, who's now the new race director of that event. Ron contracted all the riders for years. For that Tour Down Under. So he did so much for Australia, yet he lived in England after he came over here.
Hey, we got Matt White. He's joined us live
from
the start of the Tour de France. Whitey, obviously devastating yesterday with Yates.
Can I just say goodbye, Dan? Do you mind?
Oh, okay. Sorry, Phil's got to go.
If I can just nice. You're in, I'm out, Matty. But NBC were delighted with what you did for us yesterday, and thank you so much.
Yep, no problem, Phil. No problem.
And let's hope you have a much better day today, mate. Everyone,
I don't think you can get much worse.
See you, Phil.
Yeah. See you, Phil.
And by the way, for everybody who saw my screen was in black, look, they're waking up now. I've got pictures. See that?
Ooh.
So that's usually a sign I better go and do some work.
Good on you, Phil. Mate. Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
I don't know what you said,
Whitey.
I don't know what you said last night on the show with Phil, but the minute you came on, he said, "I'm going." So you've obviously upset him, Whitey.
No, I had him on. I was talking to him in the car a couple of times in the race yesterday.
Yeah, he's saying. Yeah.
But yeah, we were just saying earlier, mate, we're obviously all gutted with what happened yesterday. Tragic circumstances whenever there's a crash, but obviously with the guys leaving the Tour de France, but obviously they're wanting to ride in the Olympics as well. It's not an ideal situation, mate.
No, it's not. But look, the Olympics is not over for those two. The injuries. We need to give it another 72 hours because they're certainly not out of the Olympic Games, but not ideal preparation. But let's let the medical team decide that. But they both went home today. Someone was driving Lucas home to Girona, and Simon's partner came and picked him up from the hotel. Only both places only 2 hours from here, and then the plan for Simon was to go to the Olympics on Monday anyway. He was going, and I think that plan is not changing. And with Lucas, we're just going to have to see what happens over the next 72 hours and see how the shoulder pulls up, because it's a dislocation, but it was a pretty mild one. And he's just ridden 2 weeks of the Tour de France, so in a couple of days rest, he might come up okay, mate.
We were talking earlier on the show. We had a viewer question, and it was like, well, okay, if there's mountain stages coming up, is it all chips in for Chavez, and then what's the plan of attack, obviously, with Bling as well?
Well, I think the way the race has panned out and the way that UAE are riding the race is, I expect another big break to go down the road today. And it's a strange one today because it's a solid day, but it's also a day that could entice some not just the pure climbers to go, because I don't see an interest from the rivals of Pogačar to push the pace once the break is gone today. So I think once that right combination can go, that could take a while. But I don't see any team with the will to bring it back today, knowing what's on tomorrow.
Whitey, you've got so it's 4 days in a row now. When you think about the green jersey with Michael, also Philipsen, as John's already mentioned tonight, that he's come much closer now. So for pure speed, even if Cavendish was to not get through to Paris, Philipsen would be a big danger for Michael. But these 4 days, it's a real slow burn for the sprinters, isn't it? So what are you expecting from Michael? And of course, Cav, who seems to be on the form of his life, but now these 4 days in a row in the mountains, it's going to be pretty tough for all of those guys at the back of the group.
Yeah, I think for the pure sprinters, it's about survival. The good news for Cav is we haven't got too many days where there's climbs straight out of the holes. So there might be 4 mountain days in a row, but today might be a harder day than one of the Queen stages, just because it's going to be raced at such an intensity. The time cut's going to be lower, and if you are in trouble early, you're going to spend a long day behind. Whereas with the climbs are in the second half of the stage, you've just got to get through, and then the gruppetto doesn't form like it used to, but they're easier stages to survive. So it's pretty clear from us. We need to take points in the immediate sprint when we know that Philipsen and Cav are not going to be there, and that involves making the breakaway. So.
Can you explain
that? Today, it's going to be Sunday.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, mate. You just mentioned how the gruppetto doesn't form like it used to. Just for the people at home, can you explain why that is and what the difference is?
Yeah, I suppose before the riders, had a little bit more respect for each other and a bit more common sense, I reckon. If there's now the guys just push on until they end up catching each other eventually anyway. But back in the day, the riders used to talk to each other, and if there was 2 climbs to go and the pace was really on, people would call gruppetto, and a group would form who couldn't do their work for their leaders anymore, and were just looking to get through the rest of the day. Now they'll push on over one climb, or there'll be 4 different groups, and eventually they'll ride back into each other. But they could save a hell of a lot more energy if they rode a little bit smarter.
iffy.
Yeah. They're not that smart anymore, mate. Exactly right. There used to always be a captain.
His phone's blown up. Body's gone. But great insight again.
Yeah, but there used to always be a captain of the gruppetto, a certain guy who was actually in charge of it. And he would set the pace. So they would, set a pace that they could all get over on a climb and then work like the clappers down the other side and on any flat ground in between, and then ride steady up the climb. But always one guy in charge who was the boss of that gruppetto.
Yeah, and Johnny, I reckon, say my time, it was a lot of the Italian riders. Gruppetto is, it's the Italian word for the back group, and I remember it was always the Italians were always very vocal, I must say, but they would be the ones calling gruppetto, and it might not go whenever they called it might go a little bit further, but yeah, there is just no Italians anymore. There is so few Italians in the race now, and obviously these young group riders. It certainly has changed quite dramatically. It's interesting hearing that because we're looking so much at the front of the race and what goes on there that we don't actually get that insight from what's happening behind and the survival of the sprinters and how that. It sounds easy, doesn't it? It's a hilly stage, so the riders, the sprinters and their lead-out men, they just form a nice little group and roll turns to the end. It's not quite as simple as that. It never was, but it's certainly nowhere near like that now, as Whitey just explained. So it's great insight.
He's back. Is that on the iPhone or BlackBerry?
This is an iPhone. And, mate, sitting in a car with no AC on, I'll give you about 7 minutes before this thing hooks up as well.
Well, mate, we really appreciate, obviously, the time that you give us because, I know it's bloody hectic, the Tour de France. So even when that BlackBerry does blow up, mate, we appreciate all the insights regardless.
So, who's your pick for today? What do you think will happen?
Mate, picking today, it'd be probably easier to pick the bloody supplementary number in the lottery, I reckon. Yeah, look, any one of 40 or 50 riders could go up the road. Wins.
It's gone. Yep.
It won't be anyone in the top 12 on GC, that's for sure.
Okay. All right.
Top 13. Hopefully not no one in the top 13, just from 14 onwards. Which is Esteban.
Ideally for us, we've got multiple guys in the breakaway. It'd be good to have Esteban in there. It'd be good to have Michael Matthews in there. I know our big guys are going to try, and let's see how long it takes. It could go quick, but I highly doubt it. And I would think that it's going to be a pretty intense first hour of racing. Yesterday had the potential to be that, but we turned onto a narrow road after about 20K. And 2 or 3 of the sprint teams were able to block the road after that 3-man break left, and that was it. The guys couldn't get out of there, and that was all she wrote for the chance of a breakaway. But geez, yesterday's course was a sketchy one, I tell you. Like I've seen a few rough courses in the Tour de France, but that I should have taken account of how many roundabouts, speed humps, narrow roads, narrow towns, and then to top it off, we had loose gravel on a descent. The boys were doing about 60k an hour on. So it was a rough day yesterday. It was a rough day.
Mm-hmm. Hey, well, stay safe today, mate. That's the main thing, I suppose.
But they have street sweepers and things like that ahead of the race. What got through to the keeper on that one? Because normally they'd be looking after gravel and all those sorts of things. It's unusual for ASO.
It is. I don't know. Look, it was like one of those roads that hadn't been sealed properly, and they did say that they went through with the sweeper. Maybe because of the angle of the climb, it didn't work properly. I know when I was out of the car looking after Lucas, the side of the road was real deep, like real deep. So it would only take one person to brake, and then other people just slid. And yeah, that's why 20 guys went off on the right hand side. But those guys were going fast, and they said they swept the road, but obviously not well enough. Our riders knew we had a vant course. We told them that there was loose gravel on the road, but it doesn't matter if you know. If someone crashes in front of you or someone makes a mistake, it had a big domino effect as we saw yesterday.
We've got a stat on the roundabouts from yesterday, thanks to Benji, 97 roundabouts on yesterday's stage. That would have to be up there.
Yeah. And then that's not including, as we know, all towns now are putting in speed humps Every single town we went through, there's speed bumps in the town, going out, exiting the town. It was a really hectic, nervous stage today, and actually the wind was actually down. It could have been a lot windier, could have been a lot more stressful, and at the end it didn't work out that well for us.
All right, mate. Anything else you want to add? Before we let Marty go?
Oh, yeah, one question, because Matty Keenan asked me to ask you, why don't Durbo and Spratty wear their Australian colours as former national champions on their sleeves, like most other riders in other teams do? Is there any reason why they don't do it?
That's a good question, which I haven't got an answer to.
Carry on.
What's that?
I said carry on.
Yeah, I was actually under the assumption that rule changed actually a couple of years ago, that they because I know that was getting a bit out of hand. There was people who had won junior world cyclocross championships who were putting rainbow bands on their shirts, and I know the UCI did change the rules. I just can't remember any of our guys actually in the past having the green and gold stripes after they exited wearing the national championships jersey. So it's not just Durbo and I don't remember Gero having green and gold on his jersey after he was national champion, nor Edmo. So yeah, that's a good question, which I haven't got an answer to.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Okay. One more for you from me, mate. You mentioned how hot it is, so hopefully we'll let you go in a minute. But with the temperatures down south much hotter, Pogacar has been quite vocal about how he doesn't like the heat so much. Do you think the teams will try and force that and make it hard on these hot stages and try and do something for their overall, or are they more racing for second?
Well, the tactics of Ineos the other day, clearly they wanted to put him under pressure. I don't think. Well, he has been very successful in the Vuelta. He has won the Tour de France as well. He might not enjoy the heat, but I think with some of those guys, they struggle sometimes in their first exposure to the heat, and I think they do get better. It's been a very, very mild summer over here. And look, it's warm today. It's 30 degrees, but it's not. We're not talking 40 degrees. We're not talking extreme temperatures. And I think the guys do get pretty acclimatized pretty quickly. I think, yeah, let's see how things go. I think if we see any more weaknesses in him, which I don't think we've actually seen a weakness at all, but if we do see him faltering in the next 48 hours, maybe that might change in the back end of the Pyrenees. But like I said, it's not 40 degrees. It's 30. It's manageable, and I think the other day he just had a bad moment and made a wise decision just to go back with the guys behind him and not push the limits when there was a 25-kilometre descent to the line.
All right. Well, thanks again, Whitey. Thanks for joining the show, mate. We really appreciate it. We'll check in again tomorrow and stay safe today.
Yeah, you too, mate, and get onto the strep soles.
No, don't get me started. Cheers, mate. Speak to you soon, buddy.
See you, gents.
Well, boys, we are going over time. And I said to you, John, let's keep it short and sharp. We're 57 minutes. We haven't run the ads yet. Let's go to the ads, and we're going to wrap the Giro Donna after the break. And we'll try and get it around an hour. See you at the other end of the break.
The Let's Go Motorhomes app has everything at the tip of your finger. From car parks to campgrounds, tips and tricks. The app makes your road trip smoother. This is the way to go. Download the Let's Go Motorhomes app today.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match, but not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Thanks again to Let's Go Motorhomes and, of course, a Bike Exchange. And don't forget, the best contributor will get a $500 Let's Go Motorhome voucher each week. We've settled on contributor, not question. Yeah. So just stay involved. We had some great comments today, lots of laughs. And Iffy, your bread and butter, the Giro Donna. It was a bit of carnage overnight, mate.
Yes, unfortunately, getting towards the finale, I think it was about 10 inside the last 10K. There's 3 Bike Exchange girls down in the one crash there. It was Spratty, Grace Brown, and is it Georgia Williams, the Kiwi? Yeah, they managed to get up, but Grace has had to withdraw. Hopefully she'll still be all right for the Olympics, because she's going to be a big show over there in Tokyo. But ended up being a bunch finish, and I've got the placings.
Lorena Weebs.
Yeah, Lorena Weebs won the kick in from Emma Norsgaard and Maria Spalato. Lisa Bernal, and overall nothing's changed. We've still got the girls in front. You've got Anna van der Breggen with her teammate Ashley Moulman-Passio at 2:55. Demi Vollering at 3 minutes, and I think Spratty's dropped down one place to 13th now. But tonight is their big challenge. It's a real mountain change with a mountain with an uphill summit finish. So. We'll see if there can be any cracks in the Dutch girls, but I think they're looking very strong.
All right, who's your Oh, sorry, Scotty.
That's right, mate. Tonight is an opportunity for Anna van der Breggen to extend her lead in the overall classification. I think that's the way it's going to go. She's just so dominant. And then it's one more sprint stage. The question I wouldn't mind putting to the team, actually, the Aussie team, is with Sarah Roy. They haven't really been lining her up in the sprints. I'd love to know why that is. I know a couple of days ago they went all in for Spratty for the overall classification and sacrificed Sarah for it. But, Commander is a fair way down. Like, she's almost 9 minutes down on the overall classification now after the crash from last night, but she was already a long way down. And with no insight whatsoever from me, the question is, why would they not have at least given some sort of push towards Sarah Roy as the Aussie champ, who can sprint, to have a real crack in one of these sprint stages? Maybe it's the last stage. We'll see.
Maybe. Save it for the last day. Yep.
All right, boys. Predictions. Stage 14. Who do you think's going to win? Obviously, Whitey said it's a chook lotto. There's 50 riders that he thinks can win. You're willing to throw the dart at the dartboard? Who do you think, Scooter?
Alaphilippe. He's going to have another crack. He's been in every move so far, and maybe this is the one that's going to stick.
He's done a lot of work, though. He doesn't look fresh. That's the only problem.
Wout van Aert.
Well, Van Aert. I think there was a comment on who the top guys were in the stage. I'm trying to bring that up, and I've lost it. So just talk amongst yourselves, guys. Here we go.
Wow, isn't it? He's incredible. Yeah.
And he says the bookies like Van Aert, Alaphilippe, Mahoric, and Asgreen for today. So that's probably, I'll just run with that. Good on you, Andy. You've saved us having to do a prediction. You narrowed it down to 4. Hey, fellas, really appreciate you being on the show. I've got to go. I think the boys are going to order some Domino's, so I've got priorities.
Cheers,
yeah, we'll see you again tomorrow night, guys. Remember, like, share, subscribe, youtube.com/Detour Podcast, and keep donating to the Careca Foundation, careca.co.za/Peloton. It's a great cause. We'll see you again tomorrow, hopefully with some lemon tea and some honey. I'll be back.
And requests for you to get the guitar out. So what songs they want.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Desperado.
As long as it's in that 90s power ballad sweet spot, we're on the right track. So
and to make sure we make it even as best as it can be, I won't do my normal backup singing with you. Okay.
I'll join you in that one, John. I'll join you.
Okay. No worries. We'll see you again tomorrow night, guys. Thanks again. Cheers. Bye.